Okay, Algebra 8, we are doing section 4.3, properties of exponents. I, for some reason, really like this section because we get to take some really big numbers and we get to apply the properties of exponents. These properties allow us to simplify and to write these powers with one base, but the actual mathematical operations are really simple, okay? So there's three different types. There's multiplying powers with the same base, there's dividing powers with the same base, and then there's raising a power to a power. Okay, so we're gonna break this down. The first thing is that when you have the same base, what this means is that we really have 5 3s and then we have 8 more 3s. So how many 3s do we have? We've got 13. So you can just add those exponents together and you get your final answer. So I'm going to give you one visual and then we'll just apply the rule. So what this means is that I have 4 5s. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then that means I have 3 more 5s. So how many 5s do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's your answer. You do not have to calculate it, you just have to write it with one base. So what we did is we just took and we added 4 plus 3 and we got 7. So in this next one, your base is 4, that does not change. I have 2 4s, I have 8 more 4s, that gives me 10. And that's your answer. Letter C. If the bases are different, you cannot combine. So this is your answer. So basically, you can write on there, cannot simplify if you'd like. Just so you remember, but that is one power because they have to have the same base. You can even do this with variables. So it's an A. We don't know what A is, but we've got 12 of them. And then if you have 11 more, how many do you have total? Well, we have 23. And the same thing here works even with negative exponents. If you have a positive number and then there's no exponent, there's just a 1 there. So we have 16, and this is going to be a 1 plus a negative 7. I'm just kind of writing this out here so you can actually see what I'm doing. So then if you have a positive 1 and a negative 7, when you add those together, you get a negative 6. Okay. So our next example are dividing, and this goes up here with our dividing. So notice what occurs when you divide powers. So if I have 5 to the 5th, and 5 to the 3rd, you'd have 5 5s on the top and 3 5s on the bottom. Well, what happens is every time, if you think about this, you have a 5 over 5, that equals 1. Okay, so what we're doing is we're crossing 1 5 on the top, 1 5 on the bottom, 1 5 on the top, 1 5 on the bottom out every time we do this. And what happens is we're left with 2 5s on the top, which would be 5 to the 2nd. So what happens when we divide powers? You're subtracting, okay, the exponents. So in this one, we are going to do 8 minus 5. So I'll write this out, 10 to the 8 minus 5. This gives me 10 to the 3rd. 5 minus 3, this would be 7 to the 2nd. And the bases are both x's, so I can do x 10 minus 9 is just 1. Okay, so really we're not calculating out big answers. I didn't have to take 8 to the 23rd or 4 to the 10th. I just am writing it with one base. Now the last type, and I'm just going to grab a piece of scratch paper to show you this. When you have a power to the power, I'm going to use a small number for this so I can show you. If I had 2 squared to the 3rd, let's look at this. What this really means is that I have 2 times 2 inside here, but I have 3 of those. So that means I've got a 2 times 2, and I've got a 2 times 2. I've got 3 of them. So how many 2's do I actually end up with? Well, I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when you have a power to a power, what you do with these is you multiply them. So this one, 7 is your base, and that stays. 5 times a negative 3 is a negative 15. 8 is your base. 9 times 11 is 99. 2 is your base. A negative 7 and a negative 2 is going to give you a positive 14. X is your base. 10 times a negative 6 is a negative 60. Now this one looks really complicated. It's not. Just ignore. The base is 2/3. So you can have a fraction as a base. And then your exponent is going to be 12 times a negative 3. So 12 times a negative 3 is a negative 36. And then our last one here, 17 is our base. 2 times a negative 20 is a negative 40. So we did not actually calculate, did not make you take 8 to the 99th power. We're just practicing writing it with one base.